The film begins in South Korea, which has been devastated by a deadly flu. This virus is 10 times deadlier than any other virus, killing hundreds of thousands of people. People are dying on the streets as a result of the flu, cars crash into each other, and the city has fallen into chaos. Let's go back a few weeks to see how it all started. Everything began in Baeonong, South Korea, where two brothers, Byung-ki and Byung-woo, approach the container containing the illegal immigrants. When they open it, they are surprised to find that everyone has died except for one. Unsure what to do, the brothers film the scene and place the survivor inside their truck. However, when they stopped at a grocery store, the survivor managed to flee. Byung-ki tries to track down the survivor, but eventually gives up and instead takes his brother to a clinic because he was coughing a lot. The doctor lends Byung-woo some medication and tells him to get some sleep, but he can't stop coughing. He spreads his droplets to everyone in the area around him. Following that, we see an overview of the virus slowly consuming the city of Baeonong. Kim later receives a call from the hospital notifying her that there has been an unexpected emergency. She has no choice but to leave her daughter Miru in the care of her grandmother. When Kim arrives at the hospital, she rushes into the emergency room where the patient, Byung-woo, is in a life-threatening state. The doctors find Byung-woo's phone and discover video of the container filled with human corpses. They are certain that the virus started there. They approach the patient's brother Byung-ki to find out about it, but he remains silent. Suddenly, an emergency alarm starts blaring, and this makes Byung-ki anxious. Despite the doctor's warning, he rustles everyone and rushes into the emergency room, only to find that his brother has passed away. By this time, thousands of people in the city have become infected by the virus, resulting in the hospitals becoming overcrowded with patients. Elsewhere, Jiku, Kim's friend, has taken Miru to a supermarket. After a while, as they prepare to leave, chaos begins to unfold. People start coughing up blood and falling unconscious. Jiku notices a woman about to fall from the escalator and saves her, but in the process, he loses sight of Miru. During this time, a series of accidents occur outside, resulting in mass casualties. Now the virus is spreading at such a rapid rate that the hospitals and communication systems have become overwhelmed, and the quarantine is the only solution to control the virus. As the researchers plan to evacuate the city, Dr. Kim informs her colleagues that she will join them later, after she finds her daughter. She calls Miru, but Jiku picks up and briefs her about the situation in the supermarket. Wasting no time, she reaches the place, but is devastated to find that her daughter is missing. Kim and Jiku search for the little girl in the midst of the chaos, and eventually find her. Kim requests that Jiku leave the city along with them, but he refuses, claiming that it is his duty to help the people. He then hands her his car keys and sends them away. Kim and her daughter reach the airport. But just as they are about to head towards the final chopper to Seoul, Miru starts coughing. As a result, they are denied entry. That night, the Korean army, along with the U.S. forces, reinforce a strict lockdown throughout the city. The residents are relocated to a quarantine camp. Kim arrives with her daughter and notices the dilapidated state of the place. Later, while Kim is tying her daughter's hair, she notices red rashes on her neck. Despite this, she takes her through the examination room and into the quarantine camp. Down in the camp, Mansai is finally discovered by the authorities. The doctors find out that he has somehow overcome the virus and developed an immunity. They then call Kim to start working on an antibody, as she is the only doctor in the camp who knows about the virus. After a while, Kim enters the special tent, where Mansai is being held. Even though the higher authorities instructed her against injecting the antibodies directly, she proceeds to use it on Miru, who has now become extremely sick. Kim starts a transfusion between her daughter and Mansai. A few moments later, the troops notice her and barge inside. They then put her to sleep and take the infected Miru away. As Jiku's searching for Miru, he comes across a horrific sight. A large crane is grabbing a pile of dead bodies and dumping them into a stadium, which has now become an incineration pit. Jiku suddenly hears a ringtone and realizes that it belongs to Miru. He rushes to the location and finally discovers the little girl wrapped in plastic, still alive. Because of the public outburst, the medical personnel decide to leave the place and continue their research on Monsai elsewhere. At the same time, Kim desperately searches for her daughter around the camp, but fails to find her. As a result, she reluctantly leaves with the medical staff. The Schneider and the vice president are not happy with the situation, but they decide to wait for the antibody. Unfortunately, Monsai dies in the ambulance. And with him, their hopes of developing an antibody also dies. When the vice president learns of this, he secretly instructs the army to stop the outraged civilians from entering the Seoul border. While several civilians are killed in the shootout, Jiku somehow escapes the place with Miru. She started to feel better, implying that the antibody worked on her. Kim rushes to meet her daughter, but she is stopped by armed soldiers. She keeps mentioning her daughter having the cure, so one of the soldiers drives her to their base to speak with the president. Kim informs the president that her daughter has been completely cured of the virus and may have an antibody to it. When the president hears this, he orders his soldiers to stop their fire, but Schneider isn't convinced and orders them to continue shooting. Kim arrives at the border and runs towards Miru, who is among the infected. Unfortunately, she was shot while attempting to cross the boundary line with her daughter. But, before the soldiers can do any more harm, Miru shields her mother and repeatedly tells them not to shoot. Everyone, including the soldiers, take a step back. Following that incident, the president goes on television and declares to the world that he will find a cure and do whatever it takes to save his people. In the final scene, Miru is sent to Seoul to develop a vaccine, while Kim and Jiku remain behind. The film concludes with a reporter announcing that the vaccine has been successful, and that the people of Bundang will be the first to receive it.